Good morning. Welcome to Mystery Book Club. I'm Sally Handley, and I'm author of the Holly and Ivy Cozy Mystery Series and the standalone suspense novel Stop the Threat. I'm delighted to turn this meeting over to our moderator, Melissa Westemeier, who has uh, we're discussing the first book in her series, Old Habits Die Hard, and we will maybe get a little preview from you about the book that you just released, which is book 2 in the series. So, Melissa, why don't you take over?
Okay, well, thank you for having me, Sally. I appreciate it. And hi, everybody. It's good to see some familiar faces again from the last meeting a couple months ago when I was able to be here. First, I should ask, were any of you able to read the book, Old Habits Die Hard?
Yes, I read it.
Okay, awesome. So just a little background about the book. That's my first cozy mystery I've ever written. I have tried to write mysteries a long time ago, and they did not turn out well. I got a solid rejection from Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine on a short story. And then another time I tried to write a murder mystery, and it turned out just to be a regular story, and there was no mystery.
You
So
know, I have to tell you, the first draft of my first book in the series, I got to the end of the story. It was about 98 pages long, and the same thing happened to me. It was like I had no suspects. I just wrote the story, and I thought, oh boy, that didn't work. And I had to go back and start
better.
all over again.
I feel better. Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of fiction or cozy fiction, especially. I've been reading them like practically my whole life. Like probably a lot of you, I got started with Nancy Drew and Encyclopedia Brown and some Trixie Belden, and then, kind of advanced to some Martha Grimes and Dorothy Cannell was another writer that I really enjoyed when I was younger. And just all along the way. And then I did write this book as part of a project with another writer who I'd worked with for a very long time, and that's in the end notes, the author's note at the end of the book. But she was a mystery writer, and I wanted to just pick up the project as sort of an assist to her because of her medical condition and everything, and just make sure that the book got finished, or that it got brought to fruition. So she had this idea about the setting, which is a place where she actually lived for part of her uh, before she got placed in like a memory care and more intensive assisted living situation. She was at what is actually a refurbished abbey that got turned into senior apartments. And so she was really fond of that setting and wanted that to be the place where the story took place. And where she was currently living, there was a retired nun who was her neighbor, and she wanted the amateur sleuth to be this based on this woman who's a retired nun. And she had an idea about the building manager and the suspects, and of course the victim. Those were all her concepts. The biggest change that I made from her original vision was she wanted the detective to be based on Endeavor. If you are any of you fans of Endeavor on PBS Masterpiece Mystery?
Oh, I think I may have watched one episode. I'm not sure, but I'm aware of the program, but I haven't watched it much.
So he's a younger detective, but the series is set in the 1960s in England, in Oxford, and he's very foppish, British, tall, lanky guy. He does crossword puzzles and sings in a choir. And I'm like, no, if this is going to be a modern mystery, we just got to change this guy. So I based the detective characteristically off of my oldest son. So my oldest son is 26 years old. AJ's 28. So I tried to kind of create like just a younger, more dynamic, sort of a more of a millennial type of character in that spot. So not somebody so mature. And I think that's a really good foil for Bernie because, as an 80-year-old, she's in a totally different mentality about a lot of things than him, and just thought that was really fun to play with. So I guess my first question would be, what let's start with just like the setting details. And is this a dynamic that makes it difficult or easy for a crime to take place? Is it a place that is easy to imagine, or maybe possibly confusing? I don't know.
Oh,
I thought it was, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sally.
no, you go ahead, Darlene. I talk too much.
No. I thought it was a great setting because it was an enclosed setting. So it's so much easier to find the clues and look at the people and your characters. So I really enjoyed that part of it.
And I think the idea of an abbey is something that I think it, whatever your persuasion, I think it's easy to imagine that kind of a building.
Yeah.
And a- even if you went to like a grammar school, you can imagine it being converted into apartments, right? In
Mhm.
fact, I have a friend who's a writer, Cindy Blackburn, um, and she lives in a co-op building in Easley, South Carolina, that is a converted school building.
Oh,
And I mean, it's amazing, the high ceilings and the big windows, and it's beautiful. So yeah, I found the setting very easy to identify with.
I thought it was easy also to identify with. I I'm trying to remember, but I think at some point I was wondering about the second floor. Was there an elevator there?
no.
Okay, so that was the only thing that you've got all these old people trying to
Yeah.
go upstairs. But other than that, the settings of the rooms and all that sounded and the road trip that they did to the theater and all that, that's seemed that with the experience that I've had, it was very realistic. So
Actually, installing a handicap elevator could play a role in a future book for sure, right?
Oh, I am taking note of that suggestion as you said, because I'm like, you know what? There should be an elevator for ADA compliance and in the circumstances. And absolutely, Sally, I think that could be a fun little
Yeah.
opportunity.
I thought
You could
maybe
have
I had
fun-
missed it or something, but
fundraising goes awry, money disappears. Oh my God, there's so many ways to go with that. Oh,
Take that turn. I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
And
very.
building the elevator, maybe they could find a body in the shaft or something.
Oh,
Ooh.
oh, see,
Yeah, when they start to renovate, they find a body. Oh, wow. There you go. There's two novels right there.
so many. I mean, it could be like a quadruple crime threat here in one book. But yeah, it was fun to come up with that kind of a setting, and I do love old architecture, so I thought it was just delightful to play with that concept of repurposing an old church and an old school to a new use.
mhm, yeah.
And then and I love cozies too because of the characters, that idea of a close community where people do have trust with each other and great funness, even though they are annoyed with each other sometimes too. That's just real, right?
Yep.
Sure, for sure. Well, I totally appreciated this nun as a character because I went to Catholic school for 8 years, okay? And, like in two different schools and, two different orders of nuns. But the thing that nuns of that age, of that vintage, who were maybe that age when I had them, right, is that they feel very much responsible for whatever is going on around them and are quite I would say fearless, but also just easily inserting themselves into any situation that like, well, what's going on there, and like that they need to be involved. And this nun in particular, because she was a teacher in that building, felt an even more responsibility for the building and the people in it, and anything that went on, she felt she was justified in inserting herself into the situation. And that is absolutely my memory of nuns.
I was such a fan of making her that type of personality too, just because the trouble with the amateur sleuths sometimes is they have to have a reason to get involved in the investigation, right? That's a real challenge. And if, and so for, and in some ways, I'm very grateful for Mariana for giving this idea out into the world. Like Bernie's such a great character. And in this particular book, she is, it's her building. These are her people. This is her community. Of course, she's going to get involved. But when you extend it into a series, and this was where when I first started shopping around the series, and I was told it has to be or I was shopping around the book, and they said it can't be published as a standalone book. It has to be a series. I'm like, good golly, how do you make a nun who lives in this senior building? What possible crimes can she be involved in? Like the first one made sense to me, but then taking her outside of that setting is a real challenge, and it's provided me with great opportunity to be creative, that's for sure. But that's always been a pet peeve of mine in some cozy fiction, when it just seems like the gap between the amateur sleuth and the crime that's committed is just too wide. I'm like, why are you getting involved? You're just annoying me now. So I really like there to be a tight fit. And I think in book one, Bernie's definitely a tight fit.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and the fact that the detective was one of her students, that was a good link for her to have a connection, to move in without sort of trying to establish relationships with somebody new, with a new detective.
Yeah, I like AJ having that connection to her and to the building. Having that hometown guy kind of come in establishes some nice trust out of the gate too, which I find important.
And I think taking her out, maybe I didn't understand you correctly, but taking her outside of that setting would not be that unusual nowadays. I mean, they pretty much act independently until they come back to wherever they're living. So I think she could do almost anything.
And she's had to, but it's just finding that, like, why are you investigating this murder? This murder has to have a link to you personally, right? And I know I cannot kill off all the residents in the Abbey, because it becomes like Midsummer Murders really fast. Like, nobody wants to live there. Come on. You get 0 stars. Meadow loses her job. Nothing good happens.
I haven't read much Osmond, Richard, but isn't that sort of the same thing that he does? Isn't it set in a, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, retirement community. Retirement community.
Retirement.
Yeah, but the death is not somebody who is a resident. So that gives it a big boost.
But I think the interesting dynamic between the detective and the nun, is also his trying to keep her uninvolved for, like the normal reason that cops don't want somebody interfering, some amateur interfering in their investigation. But also, he's protective. He wants to be protective of her. So I think there's a lot of room to grow in with that, the grudging respect he might have for her abilities to observe things and to analyze things. So that, but I could see where in book 2 you could still have that edginess to their relationship, but as time goes on, he appreciates her perspective on things. So then if you came up with a murder that occurred outside, there could be a reason, like a religious riddle or something, that he would go to her for help with, right?
Yeah. And she does bring something to the investigation. Like and it has to, I really think that's important for an amateur sleuth, is they can't just be like running around meddling and then finding things, but they have to be able to bring some kind of insight or expertise that makes them invaluable to the solution. And for me, it was really important for Bernie to have that.
Yeah.
She had that piece of information that AJ couldn't get, right? Otherwise, she's not necessary. And I needed her to be necessary.
Well, I could see her in any situation being an observer.
Yeah.
Taking the facts in and then finding a way herself to connect with whoever was actually handling the investigation. I mean, because she's a little old lady that probably doesn't know very much, but you know, they'll humor her.
Right? She can almost kind of exploit that
Yes,
perception.
exactly.
Women
And
have been doing that for years. You're right. It's a good way to go, especially with that type of character.
yeah.
Isn't that the truth? You know, we were talking about that being women in the workplace, you know, like in the 70s, and the idea of and I remember at one point when I changed jobs, I knew that there was one person in the management group that was, you know, like hoping that I was going to be unable to do anything, right? And be inefficient and whatnot. And I thought, this is great because he totally underestimates me, which means I can just fly under the radar. And once I do what I have to do, he won't be able to stop me. And that's exactly what happened. So, you know, like that's the whole thing about being underestimated. You don't realize, everybody doesn't realize that there's a real advantage to that sometimes.
Yes. So much for who you are even.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Interesting. Interesting. Your cast of characters too was interesting. Uh,
Mhm.
How did you come up with the idea of this man who was posing as a woman in this situation?
So that was Mariana's idea for the inciting incident. In her mind, it was funny for Bernie to discover the to come off. Like that was like the scene the book had to open with, and then taking it from there was like that was the challenge for me as a book. Like, okay, go disguise, is this disguise, you know, there were questions to answer, like from the victim's perspective, right? Like, how much effort is he putting into this disguise? How long was he intending to be disguised this way? Because this isn't a story about a transgender person. This is a story about a person who's just trying to pass under the radar because he knows very dangerous people want to come after him because he's done a very bad thing. And as I kind of dug into this idea of like, well, what's his motive? And then thinking, well, where could you live for, you know, cash and temporarily, and who'd be the type of community that would just let people like pass through almost, right? And of course, if you were a bad person, like a hitman looking for a bad guy, you're going to go to those easily identifiable transition spots. But a senior living, you know, that's not a shady hotel, right? That's you pay cash for a room in a shady hotel, but the idea of paying cash to live at the Abbey, and I just think that the victim is very clever in a lot of ways, and how he's trying to lay low and kind of gather his resources and be ready to fly and start his new life, you know. I had fun thinking about it from his perspective.
Yeah, I found him yeah, that was a really interesting twist.
It was like a double mystery in a way, because you start the book, the first question is, who is this person? Because they are not who they've presented themselves as being. And
Right.
that's like the first whole half of the investigation is, as you can't figure out like why they were killed until you figure out who they are.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the murder, if it's a murder mystery, you just have to have that explanation, like what's the motive? And if you don't know who the victim is, it's hard to come up with a motive. Anybody. So I found that in some ways this plotting device of this scene right away, I wouldn't have ever thought of that on my own. And then at first I was a little frustrated with it, like how am I gonna move this forward? But then I was like, oh my gosh, it's actually pretty genius, because the first stage of this investigation now becomes, who is Tony Travy? And how do we find out who Tony Travy is when they've taken great measures to try to conceal their identity? And then moving into that question of, okay, now who killed Tony Travy and why? We know the how, which you know, that isn't the big mystery, but the why, right? And then the why and the who are so deeply connected, and then that gets you your ending. But also then, of course, making sure that Bernie has a shot at bringing some important and valuable information into the investigation to answer those questions.
I think one of my favorite scenes is when she makes the excuse to go in and water the plants to get into the apartment and check it out. I thought that was really funny.
I know, she's like the queen of great excuses to get her way, right?
Yeah, yeah, she just, yeah. Which is she had to be devious, which is very unlike, but it's not,
She could
because
always justify it.
that's it. She knew her purpose was good, and whatever she had to do to get to the information she needed was justified. Yeah.
Yeah. And she can, in her, you know, in her way, she'll be like, well, that's not a venal sin or whatever. She'll just
Yeah,
kind
yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
of
That's
it.
that's always interesting from a religious perspective, like when you start to split hairs and you know, figure out what is really a mortal sin and from a venial sin. I forgot those terms. This is the first time in a long time I've even heard them. Oh, Darlene got dropped from us. She's coming back
Oh,
in.
oh,
Uh,
good.
yeah, here she is.
Darlene's the bomb. Oh, so yeah, it was fun populating the building too with all of the different characters. And that was the other, you know, when you know, okay, now this is a series, just really paying attention to that character development and thinking, oh, well, in a future book, how could maybe this neighbor, you know, the resident of 218, how could they be involved in a future? And also, I had to repopulate the Abbey after the book one for book two. Like there are new neighbors that
Yeah.
which I hadn't thought of until I started writing. I was like, oh, I have empty apartments. We need to put new people in, and that's like changes that creates a new dynamic in the building and new little arguments between different people, but also new friendships.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I do like your characters that you develop. They're really interesting, and it keeps you reading on and wanting to know how they wind up and what's going on with them.
I would love to know if there was a person in the book that you could have lunch with or have a drink with, who'd be your pick?
Hmm.
Rin?
Meadow.
Oh, Meadow. All right.
Okay, remind me, I read this quite a long time ago. I think right after the convention where we met,
Oh,
we all met in person, right?
yeah.
Um,
And you've probably 100 books since then too. So,
Meadow worked in the
yeah, she.
the receptionist. Yeah. Oh, okay. So she was like a little hippie type
Yeah.
person, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she was cool. Yeah, she was an interesting character. She was an interesting character to be working in that setting.
Yes, I think so. Mariana's vision for her, all of that physical description comes from Mariana, including the idea that she is a crocheter. That's her hobby. And so I kept all of that in there. And I think Meadow's so capable. Like, yeah, she looks a little whatever, and sometimes is, but she's also like, I love her calming presence. You know, when things are getting a little crazy with everybody and stuff, she just knows how to deal with all these different personalities, and I think that's the mark of a good manager anyway. Even though she's a building manager, she's also in that capacity a people manager.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
remember the name of the guy that was the younger guy that didn't seem to quite fit in. Motorcycle, what,
Bruiser.
Bruiser, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think there was a lot of shadow around him. I think it would be interesting to know more about him. I mean, I couldn't decide if he was good or bad, but yeah.
Awesome. How about you, Sally?
Well, I suppose the nun is the one that I would want to talk to. Yeah, the minor characters, Yeah, now that you reminded me about Meadow, she was interesting, but yeah, the other ones, I don't know. You have that gruff guy, the tough guy,
Flip.
uh, and he was a little scary to me. But even there, the nun was unafraid to go and approach him and ask him questions, and she kind of managed him too, right? Because he was like a little huffy with her, and she brought him down from the
He
height.
was, he was the one in the workshop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
So,
I think that speaks to her, like her beliefs, her religious beliefs about human nature and kindness and love and compassion. She talks about it from a teaching perspective, but it also comes from her Catholic background. Like here's a person who is angry and hurting, and how do you interact with that? And as a nun, a religious person, I think her impulse should be, and it truly is, like, I may not like you, but I do want to help you, and I want you to
yeah.
be in a better position than you are.
Didn't she follow somebody into a bar at one point too? I thought that was, there are shades of Sister Act in here, you talked about having somebody come and hide themselves in this setting, but Sister Act is where they hid a witness in a convent. So yeah, there were just these little glimmers of a connection between those two.
Yeah,
And yeah,
that
nuns in bars are always funny.
old show. I don't know if you guys remember Bosom Buddies.
Yes.
That's another
Oh, yes.
where
That's
they
right. The
disguise themselves for cheap housing.
yeah, right. Right. Yeah, that was a funny show.
Yeah.
That was Tom Hanks.
Yes. A
Right.
very, very young, very early time.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing the actor that he grew into starting out with a silly role like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that's not a show that people think of very much anymore. But as I was trying to imagine Bruiser and portraying him, or trying to imagine Tony Travi portraying himself as a woman in that setting, you think of those like that. And the movie with Marilyn Monroe and Tony
You
Curtis.
like it hot?
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
another example of how they try to kind of blend in by being one of the girls. And
Yeah.
I thought about how, like, okay, if you wore that sort of flowy, caftany, moo-moo-y kind of thing, but because he's a guy, he misreads, right? He comes off as too showy. Compare all the other women who actually live in this place,
Yeah.
too much costumey, too much jewelry, too much makeup. And the I love how the characters are kind of looking at him like, oh, care so much about their appearance. Like that's not how any of us are. But they don't think about why someone would be doing that for a different reason.
Yeah. 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 Having to disguise himself and overly disguise himself and make sure that there was no trace of him that was
Yeah.
identifiable as male.
Yeah. And if you're just a guy, like, oh, well, what do you think women do to look like women? Like, I think that unless you do it professionally, like you're a drag queen or something, you'd be pretty bad at it. So
Exactly. Oh, that's funny.
it would be too much. But yeah, it's a fun process planting into the line of questioning to solve. And this is where I screwed up trying to write a mystery. When I was younger, I didn't know the ending, and I just thought I could kind of get there, and that's why it never worked.
Exactly.
This is the thought experiment that taught me, oh, if you're gonna write a murder mystery, you need to know the ending and work backwards, not forwards. And yeah, so now I'm smarter.
At Malice Domestic 2 years ago, I had like a break and there was nothing. I stayed an extra day. I stayed a full day Sunday. I went down and then I wasn't sure what to do. And there was a session about writing mysteries. I don't remember what the title of it was, but it was the best session I ever attended. And it was brilliant. I walked in just a little bit late and they had a flip board up. And what they had were the names of characters down the right-hand side. And across the top, they had three columns: means, motive, and opportunity. And somebody just threw out some idea, and they were developing an entire mystery using that grid. And I thought, oh my God, this is just brilliant. Because if you start out knowing all the suspects, and you have to make sure that every one of them has means, motive, and opportunity. And if you do that from the get-go, writing the book becomes a lot easier. And
Yeah.
I had known that 8 books ago.
Easier to write, and I would think too harder for the reader to solve.
Yes, because
Because
you've got the red herrings figured out ahead of time.
yeah, exactly.
And it was a fantastic experience because they would say, okay, so like what reason could this person possibly have for wanting to murder this character? And people were just throwing ideas out, just like we were doing here with, like, okay, here's the way you could go. All of a sudden, one idea generates another. And it was just a marvelous experience. And I thought that was one of the best workshops I ever attended. I thought it was fantastic. And I now use that. I used it most definitely in the last book that I wrote. I thought it worked pretty well.
I
So
taking that.
you regularly outline everything?
Well, I don't. This is like book 7 actually. I think or am I on? Yeah, I think I've written 8 books, but only 7 are in the series. So this book 7 is the first one that I did. Normally, I know I always knew who the murderer was in my books from the get-go, and then like I created the red herrings and the other people that it could be as I wrote. I didn't plan it all out ahead of time for sure. But this time I most definitely did. And I mean, I didn't have it wasn't a big outline, but I knew who the suspects were. And I made sure that they all had means, motive, and opportunity. And then it makes it much easier to write the book when you do it that way.
And see, I like not knowing who did it.
Ah.
I
Ah,
am definitely a pantster.
Well, I am too. I am too. And actually, one book I was writing 2 books ago, no, the last one before this, the Mystery of the Bogus Blooms. I had it very clear in my head who the murderer was. But as I got like 3/4 of the way through, I thought I made this so obvious that it was him. I haven't cast enough doubt about other characters that I changed who did it. And I thought, well, this is going to surprise people because it sure as heck surprised me when I had to change it like at 3/4 of the way through. So yeah, that was the first time that ever happened to me.
So
that-
like in this one that I'm doing now, I know who the murderer is because there are multiple victims, but it's finding how you trap that killer that becomes the basis for the book. It's the process, the procedure that they have to go through
mm.
to bring the person to justice.
It's got thriller elements in it, right?
Mhm.
I like that. That sounds really interesting.
This is the Nora Brady.
She's a Black widow. No, well, Nora Brady is there, but it's, there's a number of the same characters, but they're working from different perspectives.
Ah.
The latest victim was in South Africa. So
Oh.
so there's somebody that connects with the ME there, and there's somebody that connects with the police, and there's people working on her background in the States.
Well, if anybody hasn't read Peg's Fire for Hire, you should. It's great. That one, I really, really enjoyed that one. Terrific.
And that's kind of the same thing. It's a question of, who the bad guys are, but how are you going to get them?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a totally different approach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's too difficult for me to tackle.
It definitely involves a lot of plotting, that's for sure.
Yeah. Interesting.
But Sally, I might steal your mistake for myself sometime and write a story and then switch the killer at the 3/4 point just to screw with
Yeah.
myself and with my readers and make it really hard. Like, oh,
I'll tell you.
pointed here and now, whoa, wait, what?
Yeah. If you surprise yourself, you're going to surprise your readers for sure. Yeah.
So when I wrote the second book in the None the Wiser Mysteries, I was very unsure about my ability to create enough suspects and, like red herrings and all of that. So I only brought 80 pages of a manuscript to my writing partners. And what I did to amp up the suspense for different characters was just listen to them speculate. Like I didn't tell them anything about the story. They just read the first 80 pages and then I just let them talk about who they thought maybe was involved. And then that gave me insight on which characters to press into and make more suspicious and write into different scenes in different ways. And that was enormously valuable.
Well, that was brilliant.
Yeah, I know. That was my cheat for look better. I
That
can't
was, I
I
think that's brilliant.
to help me.
That's not
Oh,
really
wow.
cheating either. You're not really cheating.
It's a little like Charles Dickens used to write in serial, right? And then he would like listen to the feedback on each chapter and then, oh, we want more of Nell or whatever character. You're like, okay, gonna deliver that the next one. And I guess it's not really cheating, it's responding to your audience, but
No,
yeah.
I mean, getting ideas from your critique group or your reading partners, however, I, well, it's always interesting. I have a master's degree in Shakespearean studies, okay?
Oh, oh
And I write nothing of that quality at all. But there is a constant flow of scholars who go, well, Shakespeare didn't write this entire play, and there's proof, like, and they analyze the words and how it had to be Philip Marlowe, not Philip Marlowe, but
yeah.
Marlowe. I can't think of his first
Yeah.
name. Okay, and I go, okay, so I'm thinking of exactly what we're talking about. Somebody gives you an idea in a critique group, so like you're going to give them credit for what they wrote, or even if somebody helped you with, revise a paragraph, okay, and now it's more like what they write than what you write, but it works for you in that particular instance.
You put
They
them,
wrote the play. No, they didn't.
you put them in your acknowledgments.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So because old Will didn't acknowledge that they helped him out, I don't think, I'm sorry. I'm a big lover of Shakespeare, and I don't care if somebody wrote one scene for him. I don't care.
Hey, I apologize. The house cleaner's knocking on my door, so I'm gonna turn off the camera, but I'll try to come back before you're done.
Okay, thanks, George.
You, George.
Yes, maybe the housekeeper does it. Okay, if he doesn't come back. Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow, there's a great mystery. No
Oh.
kidding. Oh, I
What
love
a setup if somebody dies on a Zoom call. That's kind of a locked door, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of fascinating. Oh, wow. Yeah. We're just generating. I'm going to have to include in when I send the recording out, that this is a discussion for people trying to write mysteries everywhere, how to generate ideas.
Like, you
there's,
need an idea for your next book. Watch this video.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's the perfect way to word it. I will absolutely do that. Oh, Lord.
I do like that. It could be such a good mystery though. Like everybody's on the Zoom call, everybody sees each other and everything
Yeah.
going around them. Like, wow.
And the person's in a really remote location that nobody can get to them to find out. But yeah.
Using technology as your friend too. And that's one thing that I've heard people talk about with solving crimes are like, oh, with so much CCTV and, you know, consulting the cameras and things like that, you almost have to explain why that's not possible in a book, and how, oh, they were able to get around all of those top gaps, or you put them in a setting, like you said, where there just isn't, they're remote. There's no way anybody else could have, you know, there's a method of communication or no one else around.
Yeah, yeah. You know, this is funny. I have hearing aids, okay? And, you know, from the first generation of hearing aids to where they are now is incredible because, you know, I get my phone calls come through my hearing aids. You know, like if I'm listening to a podcast or an audiobook, I can walk with my dog and listen to a book on my phone. It's just totally amazing me. But I was thinking, if you left your phone in a room and you had your hearing aids on and then a crime takes place in the room and you hear it, I thought, oh my God, you know, there's tons of ways to use technology to help either, you know, create the crime or solve it.
That could almost that idea, Sally, almost lends itself to like a modern retelling of, remember the Hitchcock film Rear Window? No,
Yes.
no, yeah, where he sees the crime through his apartment and he's wheelchair bound and he can't get out.
Right. Right.
Am I thinking of the right movie?
Yes, Rear Window. That's exactly it.
Yeah, and he's like, I saw this take place, but he can't do anything about it
He
because
can't do anything about it.
and imagine.
And then I think nobody believes him.
Yeah,
The bodies disappeared, you know, they got, yeah. I'd like to see that again. That was a really good movie. Jimmy
but
Stewart,
that idea
was
with,
it Kim Novak? Yeah.
that idea with the hearing aids, and like I heard something
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. And then, you know, there some memory finally of what they actually heard. Some detail is what helps solve the crime. But yeah, that
And
would,
maybe become a potential target then too, because they are a witness.
yeah. Oh, yes. Oh my goodness.
That could
Okay, we
really,
just generated enough ideas for books to last
no,
us
we're
till.
gonna have to group think like a whole new series.
Oh yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Oh goodness.
But is that I think that's such a real thing too, of like collateral. When you read a cozy, sometimes, you know, like the witness can become just as much of a threat, and then that means a second death often. In so many
Yeah.
murder, anyway, not just cozies, but in so many murder mysteries, it's like, oh no, you knew too much, you have to go too.
Yeah, that's always that's an Agatha Christie for sure. There's always somebody who saw something they shouldn't and they end up dead. And Miss Marple figures it out though. She always does.
But and that's the difference between, you know, like the secondary and the primary murder plot, and all of that with motive. Like it can get tricky and I'm a big believer in, you have to play fair with the reader. I have to make it that the reader could have figured it out. I feel like it was almost too easy in book one with Old Habits Die Hard for readers to figure out who did it. People know, you know pretty fairly quickly. I think a reasonable reader is able to say, oh yeah, I knew who that killer was. But I think that's also satisfying. And then it's like, well, how are they going to catch him? But in the second book, well, okay, my mom told me, so I don't know if that counts as good as real praise or not, because she is my mom. But she said, I did not know who the killer was until the very.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, thanks, Mom, I fooled you. But she said it all added up. And I think that's important.
So without any spoilers, can you just give us an overview of what book 2 is about?
Absolutely. Okay, so book 2 is Dropped Like a Bad Habit. And I love, Tuli does the best covers. I am just grateful for the publishing team there. They just conceptualize it, and I'm always like, oh, I love it. How did you think? But as you can see, there's a little prescription pills at the bottom. So that's a piece of the story that takes place. It has prescription, and I'm not spoiling anything in the setup when I tell you that I needed to push Bernie out of the Abbey because I can't kill too many people there. It just does not work.
Right.
So I thought, well, then I'm going to push her one layer out into her bigger community, which is her neighborhood. And so the the deaths. I got a little carried away, not gonna lie. Like start killing people and you just can't stop yourself. And so the bodies literally start to pile up on Chestnut Street, but there's the neighborhood is also under threat by a developer. And I wanted Bernie, like, why is Bernie caring about her neighbors being killed? Well, it's also her neighborhood's under threat because it's a older neighborhood, and gentrification is a very real threat in older neighborhoods, and making sure that the people and the characteristics that make this everybody's home and maintaining the diversity of that neighborhood is really important. And community is really important to Bernie too. And I needed to be connected to the Abbey, but not in the Abbey. So I placed the next mystery just one block down, like, and some of the locations, like the farmers market, are places that appear in book one. So some of the like all of the characters in book one, except for the dead ones, of course, reappear in book two. Yeah, that'd be creepy, wouldn't it? Like, oh wait, they were dead. How are they here? Maybe that's another book. I don't know. But the I had a lot of fun developing just what happens down the block and who are these people, and everybody's a suspect now, but the suspect list is bigger because now we've expanded beyond the walls of the Abbey, and we've added a whole neighborhood block of
You should come to the next quarter because we're talking paranormal.
ooh. I think
Yes.
So yes, you could bring back old
Yeah.
residents.
Old victims, and yeah, I love that. But I do introduce a couple new characters because there are new residents at the Abbey, and one of them becomes the absolute bane of Bernie's existence.
Hi. Great.
Her
Great.
leadership, her leadership needed to be challenged, and so there's a new resident who is also an alpha female, and that really rubs Bernie the wrong way. And that conflict continues for a little while in their relationship. And that was just kind of fun to develop. And I'm really really careful with the humor, not to be mean spirited ever to the character. I hope I never come off that way to readers, because to me, it's really important that they're laughing with us. You know, the joke is always at their expense.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for moderating. Your choices were great and we really enjoyed them. And Peg Roach is our moderator for the next three, and she's got a paranormal theme coming up. And the first book for next month is When the Lantern Swings. I'll be sending out the email a second time around. And Peg, what's the second book?
Bellevue, Robin Cook,
Oh, Robin Cook, right, right. And then of course, Peg's own book. What's the title of that one? The third book?
A Haunting on Dunbar Lane.
Oh yeah,
Ooh.
they sound, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait. So thank you everyone. And again, Melissa, hats off to you. We really I enjoyed the book and wish you great success with the series,
Thank
and
you.
hope you'll be able to join us for book club in the future. So here we are signing off, and see you next month.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you. Bye, George. We'll catch you next time. I'm trying to find out how to end the recording. There we go.